Welcome to the Cultural Memory Lab Showcase. Today, we're going to talk about how the members of the projects created these permanent censorship-resistant, community-controlled archives. I'm really delighted to be here with you today. I'm Eli. I'm going to be your host. And in the chat, we've got Hannah Scott from Gray Area, who has been our project partner, delivering much of the content and expertise through the course of this. I've also got our friend Caitlin from the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, who has been the supporter of this whole project. But let me tell you a little bit about the Cultural Memory Lab, because some of you have been with us on this journey for the last year. Others are like, what have I stumbled into? Cultural Memory Lab is an incubator program that we created to support the preservation of cultural memory through technology and innovation. And it's really been designed for artists and technologists and cultural practitioners who are exploring creative ways to make sure that they have real autonomy and control over what they and their community have created. So we supported the groups by a bit of a micro grant. We were funding some projects with up to $5,000. We gave them access to this amazing resource created by Gray Area, which is this sort of facilitated deep learning workshops and experience around learning how to use the decentralized web more broadly. And then we provided some more one-on-one technical and basically project development mentorship coming from both our friends at Filecoin and through the resources here at TechSoup. And why do this work? We know the problem we hear is that archivists face these high storage costs, don't have that much technical ability often, and they have this risk of loss from centralized systems. So what we did is we equipped people with tools like IPFS, which is this sort of new way of decentralizing storage so it doesn't live on just one person's servers where they control it. And that allows for community-controlled preservation. The other thing we learned is this is actually our second project working in this space. And what we learned with the first project is we taught people a lot of things, and then we surveyed them and said, what'd you do? And what they said is not much because there were still all these barriers to implementation. And so the model that we've been trying to build out here is this cohort model where we brought 4 projects in to do this mentorship and peer learning experience so we could ensure that people actually went from idea to actually launch decentralized archives. And so we're really excited to let people show you that they went from idea to actual real implementation. And so for us, why TechSoup created the Cultural Memory Lab was to move cultural memory projects from this learning place to this implementation and doing place. And while we're doing that, we hope to then say, like, how do we replicate that model so we can then bring that more widely into civil society? So that's where TechSoup stands with the Cultural Memory Lab. But I want to bring in Caitlin Donovan from the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web to talk a little bit about why did they invest in this space? Why do they think it's important for cultural projects to have autonomy and true control over what they and their communities create?
Hi, thanks, Eli, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. Also sending big gratitude to Gray Area and TechSoup for their hard work running the program and the amazing 4 projects who participated. My name is Caitlin Donovan. I am a senior program manager at Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, which we refer to as FFDW in short. So FFDW is a nonprofit whose mission is to preserve humanity's most important information and support the development and adoption of decentralized technologies. We partner with projects building on open source software and protocol that safeguard critical data from centralized control and single points of failure. A critical component of our work involves empowering collectives, institutions, and communities to preserve archives, resources, media, and other vulnerable information. So to advance our mission, FFDW connects and collaborates with people working on a diverse range of issues to share how the resilience of decentralized storage can ensure long-term preservation of information. One way we perform this work is through our education programs tailored alongside mission-aligned collaborators like the Cultural Memory Lab. So by introducing alternative pathways to store meaningful data, such as IPFS and Filecoin, we encourage community archives to align their technology practices with their core values. This alignment is essential because culture serves as a vehicle for communities to share their knowledge, values, norms, and ethics across generations. As many of us know, traditional archival systems, while very valuable, often replicate the same power structures and imbalances that marginalized communities may face in the first place. Centralized repositories can become gatekeepers, corporate platforms can disappear overnight, and government archives can be subject to political pressures. Decentralized storage offers something revolutionary: true community ownership of cultural memory and shared knowledge. When communities control their data, they control their narratives, and when archives are distributed across networks rather than held in single institutions, they become resilient against censorship, catastrophe, and corporate whim. There's a beautiful parallel movement to point out here. Just as new cultures emerge when communities diverge from mainstream practices, experimentation with alternative technologies enable community archivists to step away from big tech storage solutions and fork from the conventional centralized internet, participating in that same spirit of creative resistance that drives cultural innovation. So by taking the decentralized path, archivists are not just preserving culture, they're actively co-creating new cultural stewardship practices and creating new models for living and organizing in the digital age without dependencies on centralized control and gatekeeping from corporate actors. So that's my spiel. It brings me absolute joy and delight to kick off the event and celebrate the work of our inaugural Cultural Memory Lab cohort. We've been fortunate enough to support 4 impactful cultural archives with their learning journey in partnership with TechSoup and Gray Area. You're going to hear from them all directly, and they'll share their experiences in building lasting community-controlled archives. Eli, should we dive in?
Yes, let's dive in. I want to tell you a little bit about BQKC, which is a Black queer archive. So our first demo is going to come from Nasir, who is the founder of the project. And that really came out of this search for a Black queer community in Kansas City. And when Nasir first arrived in town, he couldn't find that community. But through digging through the archive, found this really interesting history that was in danger of being lost. And so Nasir is going to tell you a little bit more about the work they've been developing. Nasir is an essayist and a memory worker based in Kansas City. Their work in archival research has been published in NPR, Syllabus, The Advocate, Teen Vogue, which I think is super cool. But with that, let me pass you over to Nasir to tell the story of the archive.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nasir. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm the founder of BQKC, which is a Black LGBT archive based in Kansas City, Missouri. Yeah, building off a little bit about what Eli told you, when I moved to Kansas City, originally I'm from Kissimmee, Florida. I went to college in the greater New York area. And so when I moved to Kansas City after graduating, I, of course, had my own preconceptions and fears about moving to the Midwest. I wanted to find my community upon moving here in 2021, but that became a lot easier said than done. Really, I could not find a lot about Black queer people in Kansas City online, in social media, via Google searches and forums. And so I had this larger question of what is the existence of Black LGBT people at all in Kansas City and the Midwest at large, which I knew there had to be, but I wanted to test my hypothesis by searching through institutional archives. And in doing so, I still really couldn't find anything besides of this one archive, the Gay and Lesbian Archives of Mid-America, And out of their like 600,000 materials at this institutional archive, everything they had pertaining to Black queer people, they rolled out on one cart for me. And even though this material was like beautiful and cool, I knew that there was a large pain point and need here to document the Black queer Kansas City canon. And so I began liberating these materials from the gay and lesbian archives of Mid-America, where these materials were only available physically. There weren't robust finding aids for the materials. They weren't digitized. And after writing long research articles and digitizing these materials is how I discovered the underground ballroom community in Kansas City and led me to the Black queer community I was finding here. And after hearing their pain points and working with this community, I decided to find this archive. So this archive is 82 materials of Black queer history in Kansas City that launched last year officially, but this research has been happening pretty much since I moved here in 2021. And these 82 materials tell the story of Soki's, which was a Black gay bar in downtown Kansas City that operated from 1993 to 2004, along with the many pageants, birthdays, events, etc., that happened at this space in downtown. That was ultimately shut down by a large development project in downtown called the Power and Light District. So not only does this story tell a beautiful story of Black queer community and kinship in the heart of Kansas City, it also adds an interesting discussion around gentrification and displacement, because this was the first and only Black gay bar that has existed in Kansas City. So in joining Gray Area's Cultural Memory Lab, going a little bit backwards, because this work is so precious and important, and also the reason for founding this community archive is being responsive to how institutional archives have, I guess, failed in stewarding Black queer histories effectively. I've had to do things like a lot differently than institutions have in order to properly pay homage to Black queer elders in Kansas City. So BQKC operates with a unique cooperative licensing model with elders in our community. And I've also been actively developing a unique archival science for the archive that operates on the tenets of repairing our historical record, building power and community through using the historical record, and accessibly storytelling all of the materials in the archive wherever possible, both physically and digitally, and in interesting, subversive ways. With all that said, I talk all this talk, but I want to walk the walk too. And joining Gray Area's Cultural Memory Lab and being able to take part in its Debug for Creators course through this Cultural Memory Lab, one of the biggest pain points the archive has been facing is how to store the materials. All of the materials, we digitized all of them, and there are about, even though there's 82 unique items in the archive, there are 200 plus items total when you think about all the different file versions we have. And we're not the most technical people, so we've been storing them using the 3-2-1 method that is typical of archives and community archives. But the main method we've been using to store things has been in Google Drive. But we know that Google and Meta own like 86% of the internet. We want to be cultural stewards of our own histories. And we want to find ways to stick true to the archival science that we're building. And so through joining the Cultural Memory Lab and the D-Web for Creators course, we were able to gain access to a lot of knowledge and information that we just didn't even know was possible before. And so on the slide, you can see like a whole bunch of different things that I learned through being in this lab, from learning how to self-host at home, to the important philosophical underpinnings of why folks use the decentralized web, how the decentralized web was born, that technically our internet was born out of the need for decentralization, but it really doesn't look like that anymore because of capitalism and corporatization. But there's a need to return to that. But most importantly for the archive, we were able to use what we learned through the lab and the Web for Creators course to build our own server at home that hosts materials from the archive, and also use a decentralized file storage system known as the Interplanetary File System, or IPFS. And I'm just going to demo that a little bit for y'all today. And even though I have this little slideshow here, I'm going to walk you through my Google Chrome a little bit. One of the cool, exciting things that I learned through IPFS, which actually, let me go back to my slideshow, you'll see like this like stone wall and like crazy board here, which is a Raspberry Pi. But through taking the Debug for Creators course, one of the things that we learned, like I want to say in the third or fourth session, was how to build our own at-home server using a Raspberry Pi 4 and the service called Unihost. And so this is the interface for host right here. Let me just give it my fingerprint. And on the server, you can do so many things. You'll see there's 4 apps here. And one of these is called Nextcloud, which is this like file storage system that can be like installed on the server. And through using Nextcloud and like building the server, we've been able to transfer all of the materials pertaining to BQKC, which is not only the archive itself, but all our meeting notes, financial information, staff information, onto this Raspberry Pi that I can access anywhere. And so I'm just showing y'all real quickly that all the materials from the archive are here, and it loads like very quickly. And it's been really cool, not only using it as a storage system for the archive, but also thinking a lot about all the different ways we can use this server in our work going forward. You might have seen that there is something called like Only Office installed on this server as well. We're trying to not use Google Docs and Google Sheets anymore, but just purely use like Raspberry Pi to stretch us as like far as possible away from the centralized web. And then transitioning from that, the other thing we've been using is the Interplanetary File System, or IPFS. So the way that our archive was taught to use this peer-to-peer file sharing network was through this other interface. It gives us an easier way to interact with the Interplanetary File System rather than just like using command line. And through using IPFS, we've been able to store all of the materials from the archive here too. And what's cool about this is all of the materials that are uploaded to IPFS get its own unique HTML link and its own unique identification number that allows us to be able to build a robust website going forward. This is a prototype site for the archive that was built with the help of the Cultural Memory Lab. All of these links here are links directly from IPFS. And the hope is that going forward, by the end of the year, we launch a more robust site. We'll have all of the images and materials from the archive directly loaded from IPFS, along with other information pertaining to the archive as well. But yeah, that's a little bit about the Cultural Memory Lab, BQKC, and the work I've been able to do because of the help of Gray Area TechSoup and Filecoin. But yeah, this has been like a very wonderful experience. And I think especially as a project from the Midwest, who doesn't normally have access to opportunities like this, I feel like a lot of organizations will normally look to the coast for archives to support. This has been a really welcome experience, and I'm excited to see how the decentralized web can continue to support like not only this work, but the future memory work of Kansas City and beyond going forward. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Nazir. And let me just echo what Deborah put right there in the chat, which is, this is all super amazing. And so are those photos, which of course leads to the follow-up question, which is, when you got a moment, if you can drop some links into the chat, people would love to dig in and actually experience some of this archiving work that you've been doing. That'd be super fabulous. So let's move on to the next project here, which is from the Mobility Independence Foundation. And so this next demo comes from Matthew Lacey, who's the vice president at the Mobility Independence Foundation. The project really came out of this place where basically people have been butting their heads up against the profit-driven, slow-moving medical equipment industry. And so people are doing that by routing around it, by going and creating open source wheelchair and power chair designs that are freely accessible. Often there are things in the way, right to repair laws that restrict people's ability to control and fix things they already own. And so through that, you're going to hear a little bit about the response that has been developed by the Mobility Independence Foundation. Matt's background is in manufacturing and industrial maintenance. He's been working with electrical and mechanical equipment basically forever. Growing up, his family repaired everything, the houses, the cars, the lawn equipment. And so he brings this ethic of practical problem solving to the Mobility Independence Foundation. He actually has been there since before the foundation. He was there to help the co-founder Tom repair and upgrade his own chair. And today, as vice president, he helps shape these solutions that are going to help the next generation bypass some of the nonsense they had to deal with. Let me now pass you over to Matt.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Eli, for that. That was a wonderful introduction, and I appreciate being part of this cohort. I appreciate everything that Filecoin and Gray Area has done for us and taking us down a great path for ways to fight the whole system that actually we are up against, that we want to do everything open source, which is a great marriage in with what the cohort has done and using the IPFS system. It is a wonderful place for us to be involved because we are up against all the big money, all the corporations, all of the controls that are out there in the world right now. And we just want people to have access to be able to build, repair, whatever they need to do with the equipment, design. And we want to make all of that open source. And with it being open source, it is great to have redundancies and in the ways that we can share. I think Eli hit really well on what our organization is about and what we're doing. So I think that is great. And with the decentralization, it will give us all of the opportunity to work through different venues to be able to share these things and have that information out there as long as possible, as easily accessible as possible, and in several ways to have that accessibility to these things. So we're working on a portal, which is another open source project that we worked with a university, Rochester Institute of Technology specifically. So our portal will be getting launched here in the fourth quarter of the year. And in that portal, what we're doing is putting together many things. So our first thing is to put together all kinds of what are called equipment closets around the country. And equipment closets are places where durable medical equipment is dropped off and they'll refurbish it, they'll share it, they'll do whatever they can, get it back into the community at little to no cost for people. So those are all other voluntary organizations. So from there, that will also host things as we're finalizing designs. And our first main design is a huge undertaking. It is redesigning, bringing back a power chair that has since gone defunct because it was just too good of a chair. They didn't want to keep creating it because it may have cost too much. It was too good of a chair. It allowed people to overcome obstacles that all of us in normal everyday take for advantage, walking over a curb, through your lawn or whatever. And it was a chair that was capable to really take on any obstacle that's put in front of you. The things I've seen this chair do is great. And we're working with engineers, mechanical and electrical, to design both, fully redesign the chair and the dual differential drive that it has, which is unique and part of what makes it so robust. And then we also have electrical engineers that we're working with to redesign the motor controllers, make that all open source. Like everything we are doing is all about open source. So with that, again, we're up against big tech, big medicine, big durable medical equipment industry. And we have a lot of support from the ground people that are in that world. They are loving what we're doing because they know the limits that are created by the companies they work for. So we have a lot of great support out of these people. So part of what we've done, we're working on revamping our website. So we're going to integrate into our website here things that we've done with the cohort. And some of the main things that we've done with our cohort, we worked with the University of Arizona, and they created an open source design, taking some different things literally off of Amazon to put together a training chair. It was actually a whole competition, and we had 7 different teams. And our winning one was to created this particular design. And at the time of building, earlier this year, it was $400 to order these things to put a very young child into a chair that they could drive around and learn how to do it. And that's part of the problem is, and why we had them do this was the way the system works is they will put a child in a chair that they have never been in before. So many of us drive, most of us probably drive. That would be like putting you into a car that you've never driven before and then judge you on what you do in 10 minutes in that car onto whether you're going to be able to drive for the rest of your life. That is really the experience that they get. So this is the white paper that they created and came up with, and they gave wonderful instructions. And it's probably one of the best things that we have out there and available right now that is available to others. So we were thrilled with this, the whole thing that this team did. And we worked with several different universities. Like I mentioned, we worked with RIT on our programming and our platform that we're going to have. And then we also worked with University of Rochester with designing a seating system. We're working with Eastern University now, or Northeastern University. They are going to be taking bicycle parts to create manual wheelchairs. And the reason behind this is third world countries, bicycles are accessible. They have them. Wheelchairs, not so much. So we're trying to find ways that this can be a worldwide phenomenon. And that's where it comes into being able to have this decentralized storage, to be able to share these ideas and have them out there and available for people that can get any kind of internet access and put them in a place where things are not blocked. So that's where we are, where we've come from, and where we're going to continue to go down the road of what we've been doing. So again, I appreciate everything that both Gray Area and TechSoup has done for us, and everything that we learned in the cohort, and all of the great people that were in the cohort, just learning from each of them and seeing all the great projects that they were all involved in. It was a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm really inspired by when you built up partnerships. So it isn't just us going into our office and creating these solutions, but really you're collaborating really deeply with the community to get things done. So moving into our third demo, this is going to be a bit of a pre-recorded session because we were working with a Spanish-speaking project, and so we want to have the time to put some subtitles on that so it becomes more accessible to English speakers as well. So this is about the project Digital Memory Keepers. It's about the Zapotec biocultural knowledge. And so this project documented traditional agriculture and environmental knowledge and oral histories from Zapotec communities in Mexico. And it basically said these communities are struggling with two things. They have this biocultural knowledge, which is getting lost. And then you got this language, which is also at loss, under danger of getting lost. And so this was trying to say, how do we make sure that we're able to preserve both of these pieces? Our presenter for this is Kiara Cruz, who's a project leader with expertise at the intersection of internet governance, indigenous rights, and community data sovereignty. And you'll see that through these three lenses, he's able to build with his colleagues this way of making sure that we have a way to preserve basically a community's cultural identity and ancestral knowledge.
Mi nombre es Kiara Cruz. Soy parte del proyecto de Surco, Oaxaca, trabajando principalmente en digital y relati. Antes que nada, quiero agradecer enormemente a Gray Area, a TechSoup y a Filecoin Foundation por esta oportunidad que nos han dado por ser parte de la cohorte de Cultural Memory Lab en 2025. Ha sido una experiencia transformadora para nosotros y para nuestras comunidades. Nuestra motivación principal nace en un momento que reconocemos como crítico para las comunidades zapotecas. A través de nuestro trabajo en el campo con Relati e en digital, hemos sido testigos directos de la doble amenaza que hoy se vive. Es el cambio climático y la transformación digital. Por un lado, nuestros ancianos, los guardianes de la sabiduría, están observando cambios en los ciclos agrícolas que nunca antes se habían visto. el conocimiento sobre cuándo sembrar, cuántas plantas usar, cómo percibir el tiempo. Todo ese saber acumulado por generaciones está siendo puesto a prueba. Las generaciones más jóvenes están perdiendo la conexión con estas prácticas tradicionales y de manera muy preocupante con nuestra lengua zapoteca. En este contexto de transformación digital, si no se guía con intención, puede acelerar la desconexión. Vimos la necesidad urgente de preservar lo que llamamos nuestro patrimonio biocultural y lingüístico. Esto no es solo un concepto abstracto que se discute en la academia o en otros contextos, sino es un vocabulario biocultural que se está perdiendo, ¿no?, en nuestras comunidades, no solo en la Zapoteca, sino en otras regiones indígenas de Oaxaca, México. Son estas prácticas alimentarias ancestrales, es la memoria colectiva sobre los cambios en nuestro entorno. No se trata solo de guardar el pasado, sino de, en este contexto, asegurar el futuro, ¿no? Es un acto de soberanía de datos indígenas. Nuestra experiencia no solo ha demostrado que cuando las comunidades tienen control real sobre su patrimonio digital, se fortalecen las prácticas tradicionales y, crucialmente, se reconstruyen los puentes entre las generaciones. Hablo de los ancianos y los niños, por ejemplo, ¿no? Por eso el proyecto de memoria digital zapoteca es tan vital en este contexto de transformación digital en los pueblos indígenas de Oaxaca, México. El impacto ha sido profundo. Antes del laboratorio teníamos la convicción y la motivación, pero la preservación digital, especialmente con nuevas tecnologías, se sentía como un desafío técnico enorme para el equipo de Surco, Oaxaca. Veíamos el potencial, pero el cómo era una gran interrogante. Cuando logramos resolver el cómo, pues nos dimos cuenta que sí podíamos implementar este proyecto, ¿no? Que el Cultural Memory Lab nos dio 3 cosas fundamentales que para mí son importantísimos, ¿no? El marco práctico, pasamos de la idea de que queremos usar tecnologías descentralizadas a un plan de acción concreto. La estructura del laboratorio nos ayudó a diseñar una metodología clara, dividida en fases, desde la planeación comunitaria al mapeo de contenidos hasta el desarrollo técnico y la implementación. También yo diría que nos ayudó a desmitificar la tecnología. Dejó de ser solo un proyecto técnico a convertirse en una herramienta de empoderamiento comunitario. Y tercero, quizás lo más importante, nos conectó a una comunidad de practicantes. Por ejemplo, con el taller o el curso de The Web Creators nos conocimos a más gente que está trabajando proyectos de memoria o de web descentralizado. Y nos conectó con el equipo técnico, fue increíble y valioso. Nos hizo sentir que no estábamos solos en esta búsqueda. El laboratorio cambió nuestro pensamiento y nosotros debemos resolver esto, ¿no? Podemos construir juntos como parte de un movimiento más grande. O sea, que no solo estamos aquí en Oaxaca haciendo un pequeño proyecto, sino que hay muchas otras personas a nivel global que están haciendo lo mismo que nosotros. ¿Qué podríamos decir? El enfoque ha sido siempre comunitario y por fase, ¿no? Asegurando que la tecnología sirviera a la comunidad y no al revés. Lo estructuramos en 4 etapas claras. La primera fase fue de preparación y diseño participativo, ¿no? Antes de tocar cualquier tecnología empezamos con la gente. Realizamos talleres de planeación comunitaria en las 2 comunidades zapotecas con las que trabajamos en la Sierra Norte y en el Istmo. La segunda parte fue la documentación y la digitalización. Con los protocolos claros salimos a hacer el trabajo de campo, realizamos sesiones de grabación con ancianos, documentamos prácticas agrícolas en riesgo y registramos vocabulario biocultural en las comunidades con quienes trabajamos. Yo diría que el tercero fue el desarrollo técnico. Aquí es donde integramos la descentralización. Nuestro desarrollador web implementa la arquitectura técnica y paralelamente se desarrolló una interfaz web bilingüe zapoteco y español que es conocido como Indigital. Es un micrositio para el acceso fuera genuinamente nuestro. Luego migramos con contenidos y realizamos pruebas con miembros de la comunidad para asegurar que fuera intuitivo y respetuoso. Finalmente fue la parte de la implementación y la capacitación. El lanzamiento no solo fue subir el archivo, sino hablamos con las dos comunidades sobre los cómics, los audios, los videos y todo lo que hemos producido con ellos, ¿no? Realizamos talleres de capacitación comunitaria para formar a un equipo local en la gestión digital de archivos. El objetivo es la sostenibilidad y la autonomía a largo plazo. Este enfoque por fases nos permitió integrar la tecnología de forma orgánica, asegurando que el control comunitario, en este caso tuvimos principalmente dos desafíos, ¿no? Yo creo que el primero fue el puente entre el conocimiento tradicional y la tecnología descentralizada. ¿Cómo explicar a IPFS a un anciano de una comunidad de una manera que tenga sentido y que genere confianza? ¿Cómo diseñar un sistema de metadatos digital que refleje la cosmovisión zapoteca? Esto no es un desafío técnico, es un desafío de traducción cultural, ¿no? Aquí los recursos que ya mencioné hace rato, como la cohorte y las conversaciones que tuvimos en Zoom y también el curso para creadores de web descentralizada nos ayudó mucho y nos dio la capacidad técnica para formar esto de forma creativa y no tener miedo a adaptar la tecnología a nuestras necesidades. El segundo desafío fue la capacidad técnica. Nuestro equipo es fuerte en trabajo comunitario, pero la implementación específica en la web descentralizada era para nosotros algo nuevo, ¿no? Pero encontramos una comunidad que nos ayudó a desarrollar esto. Hablo de la comunidad técnica que está usando estos archivos y creando una web descentralizada. Esto nos ayudó a avanzar hacia nuestro objetivo, que es el proyecto sea sostenible y verdaderamente gestionado por la comunidad y por Surco a largo plazo, ¿no? La importancia para nosotros sobre el uso de las herramientas descentralizadas radica en dos cosas importantes: soberanía y control, ¿no? Nos permite tener un control comunitario real sobre nuestros datos y no dependemos de un servidor externo o una institución externa que nos provee esta plataforma para los archivos, ¿no? La resiliencia, como segundo, yo diría la resiliencia y la permanencia, ¿no? La naturaleza distribuida de la tecnología significa que nuestra memoria no está solo en un lugar, sino en muchos lugares. Y tercer punto diría que la alineación con nuestros principios, ¿no? Y que esto es algo que nos emociona profundamente. La naturaleza distribuida y controlada por la comunidad de estas tecnologías resuena directamente a los principios zapotecas de conocimiento colectivo y responsabilidad compartida, ¿no? La tecnología por primera vez refleja nuestra forma de ver en este mundo, que muchas veces se ve como un latifundio tecnológico. Por eso creemos que no solo estamos construyendo un archivo, sino un modelo que otras comunidades indígenas pueden adaptar para sus propias necesidades de preservación en México y Latinoamérica. Estamos implementando todavía la parte de traducirla a la página web para que pueda ser visible a otros usuarios o usuarios finales, como se conoce, ¿no? Que los archivos que tenemos ahí puedan ser más accesibles de otra forma y más rápida desde el micrositio de indigital surco-oaxaca.org. Finalmente, decir que este trabajo ha sido un esfuerzo colectivo inmenso. Quiero agradecer a nuestro consejo asesor comunitario, a los facilitadores, todos los ancianos y miembros de la comunidad que compartieron esta sabiduría, ¿no?, con nosotros. Y sus historias con nosotros, porque involucra sus historias al final de cuentas. Una vez más, mencionar el apoyo de Cultural Memory Lab, que ha sido crucial para nosotros. Nos han dado las herramientas no solo para preservar nuestra memoria, sino para fortalecer nuestras comunidades para el futuro. Queremos que nuestro archivo sirva como un modelo replicable y que inspire a otros a tomar el control de su herencia digital en cualquier contexto en la que viva, ¿no?, indígena o no indígena. Muchas gracias por ver y por escucharme. Nos vemos en otra ocasión.
Thank you so much, Kiaro, for recording that for us. To me, I'm really struck by how for them it was so important that the way files are stored it like aligns with the core values and orientation of the community. And I think that's one of the powers that comes out of decentralized storage is that real autonomy. To say this is our community knowledge, owned and controlled by our community. Our final demo comes from the Archiving Myanmar's Digital Landscape project, developed by the Myanmar Internet Project team. This initiative documents the country's recent political and social upheavals by preserving online content tied to digital resistant efforts. The collection includes social media posts, news articles, and other vulnerable digital artifacts at high risk of censorship or deletion. To ensure long-term preservation and accessibility, the team used decentralized technologies such as IPFS. With its focus on data integrity and contributor safety, the Myanmar Internet Project is becoming a critical resource for the country's diaspora, human rights defenders, and researchers working to protect and understand the nation's digital history.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I'm George. I'm working in the Myanmar Internet Project. Our project started in 2022. One of the aims of our project is to document the key milestones in the country, prevalent online history, from early internet shutdown and social media, pluralist atrocities to the digitally orchestrated 2021 COP. Especially along with the project, we keep daily digital repression and internet shutdown even in our country. After that, we analyze these data and release the report. The aim is to emphasize our digital repression saturation by the international digital rights organization and international communities, including UN and the international governments. I believe that these digital repression evidence are important because without clear record, it is easy for these violations to go unnoticed or be denied. By keeping track of things like internet shutdown, censorship, or online surveillance, we create evidence that can be used by the human rights group, the media, and international organizations to push for accountability. It also helps raise awareness around the world about how people's rights are being restricted, but in the long run, these records serve as a historical reference to understand what happened, why it mattered, and how we can work to prevent it in the future. Before I joined the Cultural Memory Lab training, we mostly relied on Biocultural platform or social media such as Twitter to share our report and digital repression archive. But after the training, I realized the importance of decentralized Web3 tools. Now we have the opportunity to upload and process our data on platforms like structures, which give us more control, security, and resistance against censorship. We have recently started using a Web3 storage platform to share our reports. IPFS links. This shift has made a big difference. It helps us keep our data safer and more accessible. From what I understand, content stored on Web3 platform is much harder for governments to censor or take down, and it is easier for people to access globally without relying on centralized servers. One of the biggest challenges we face as digital rights activists is that the platform we use to publish data can be blocked or monitored by the government at any time. That is a serious risk that through the Cultural Memory Lab, we gain access to tools and knowledge that help us address this. Suppose we can easily share IPFS note via email or any other ways. As long as someone has the link, they can access the data without relying on centralized platform that might be censored. Decentralized tools like IPFS matters because they protect information from censorship and loss. Memory work, especially from oppressed communities can be erased or altered. Ensure future generations have direct access to the truth, even if powerful forces try to hide it. Thank you.
So we are now moving into the final phase, which is where I pass it over to you in the audience.
Hello. A small performing arts organization that is 52 years old, and we're transitioning from performing and educating and arts and education work to creating an archives of the 50 years of the organization. And it's very difficult to decide how we're going to do this, number one, because traditional archiving obviously is not going to work. It's too cumbersome. It's too. We also want to create a way so that other small performing arts organizations can save their work and share their work. Right now, when a small organization goes out of business or their founder passes or whatever, their work goes away. It's just gone, and nobody gets to see it again. So we're hoping that this project that we're beginning now can actually create something so that others can also use it and not have to be archivally intelligent or technically savvy.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of people are on that journey. And so I think this to me really fits in actually quite well with the question that came in from Sherry in the chat. And I'm actually going to throw it at both of our project leads here, which is really this big question to say, so you're beginning an archive project. That can be a little overwhelming. Where do you start? So this year I'm going to start with you. You started an archive project. How did you start to actually implement it?
Yeah, this is a super large question. It's interesting because, yeah, I think that a lot of at least from what I've noticed in a lot of the other like programs or I don't know, networks or even like friends that I've met like doing memory work, I feel like we've all fallen into it, not because we originally wanted to be community archivists, but because we saw it was a need in some way. And I think in similar ways, we all saw it was a need. We all, in order to fulfill this need, there were certain duties that like we had to undertake to understand like archiving. I feel like for me, like the best place to start is with there are like a lot of things like operating at once. And I think it was like a long journey to get here. A lot of how it started was as a research project. I was originally like a journalist, like at a Black newspaper, and was trying to figure out what my beat was in 2021. But I was also having this own personal conundrum of wanting to find my community. So a lot of how I like fell into the work was that. But at the same time, I was reading a lot of theory, like from Dia Hartman. Sorry, I was like having a brain fire on her name, and her essays on critical fabulation, of researching other archives that are really great and in the realms of social justice, Interference Archive in Brooklyn, New York. Also taking what I've learned like from other texts and applying it here. When I think about archives, I think a lot about Zora Neale Hurston and how and the work Barracoon and how she presents that work. And so I would say if you're going to start anywhere, start with reading, coming to things like this, like understanding what other people are doing in the field, but like also being responsive to what your particular community or communities need, because I feel like that's where I started. And really, in order to be a successful community archive, what the work may look like for another community archive in Kansas City or Chicago or in New York might not be necessarily like what the archive needs to do for your purposes, if that makes sense. And yeah, I guess there are like some wrong ways to do things, but there are a lot of right ways that you can do things as well, as long as you're leading with intention. But yeah, I think that's the advice that I could give. I hope that's helpful. I'll
Lovely.
also throw in the chat too, there's a syllabus I wrote on like a diagram and guide to radical memory work.
And Matt, how did your teams come at this? You're starting to build up your own archive of materials. What was the process like? How do we go from an idea to how do we start structuring it?
Honestly, I looked at looked at some different things, and I thought, okay, let's start simple. Let's start with we'll just start with our website that we have up. Why don't we just archive some of those things that are on our website, some of the cuts, some of the quotes, the pictures, other things that you'll use in the future, and you can go back and reference, or even somebody else may want to go back and reference 30 years from now. Because believe it or not, I've actually gone into the Wayback Machine. So many of us know the Wayback Machine. So that's part of an inspiration is I've gone in the Wayback Machine referencing different things for this first wheelchair we're reconstructing. But it's crazy when you get in there, sometimes either you get lost or you're missing little minute pieces of things. So what I'm deciding to do at this point is try to go through, and as we have different events that happen, just start working in a chronological order of an important event, key questions, key answers, things that we can share and have out there in IPFS that somebody in the future, 20, 30 years down the road, much like what I'm doing with some things with the Wayback, they'll be able to do this with IPFS. So I think first is you start small and you find some little things that you can do, and so that you can understand how to navigate everything and how you want to design stuff, and then start with more of a chronological documentation of what you're doing going forward from there. That's probably the best advice that I can give on where to start and how to continue down the road. And definitely get involved. Eli has referenced the GitHub that we were using, and so much great information in there. You'll use some of it, you won't use some of it, but there's so much to learn. And in there, you might not use it in your specific project, but there are other things you might decide to use in your personal life for other purposes. So it's great that is out there as a public resource for everybody as well.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah, that is super practical, deeply appreciated. We are past the top of the hour, which means we're moving into the final phase. So I'm super grateful for all of you for your deep engagement, going through this journey to adopt this thing that can sometimes be a little bit gnarly, but also, as you can see, fun and fascinating as well. I also need to drop a huge thank you to Hannah Scott, who should probably come on mic and at least take a quick bow, because our partners at Gray Area have just done so much work here, from the development of the course to really guiding us into this deep world of archives, which was newer to us at TechSoup, but which is a world that Gray Area knows so much about. Hannah, you're on the spot. 30 seconds. Tell us how great you are.
Thanks so much. I couldn't have done it without you all at TechSoup and everyone in the cohort. It was really an absolute pleasure to see what you have all been working on for the past few months. It was a sprint, but I'm really happy and proud of all the work that Nasir and Matt and your team and Kiato and all the rest of the cohort members accomplished. And yeah, we're excited to continue supporting creative applications of decentralized web technologies. And if anyone in the chat is interested in getting involved, you can feel free to reach out to me, hannah@grayarea.org. And yeah, excited for what's to come. Thank you.
Such a joy. And then finally, to the organization that has really been our coach and steward through this whole project, the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, who has been generous and supportive and understanding and challenging and all the good things you want in a good partner. So thank you so much. And thank you to Caitlin for being here with us today. So with that, I'm going to send you all on your merry way.